Hello and welcome back to another installment in how to use Tkinter to build a basic graphic user interface. We are going to be covering several different things today, and you can see them up top here. Commenting, how to change fonts, both the size, the color, and even the font itself. We're also going to cover background colors, how to change those. And then at the end, we're going to get into writing functions. And we're going to write a very basic function and attach it to this next button such that when we click the next button, everything clears from the window. So let's go ahead and get started with commenting. Commenting is a really useful thing to get comfortable using for both yourself and for other programmers you may be working with. You can see up here that each of these lines are preceded by this pound sign or this hashtag or whatever you want to call it, the number sign. And what that number sign is doing is telling Python not to try and interpret these lines as actual code. So you can see if I were to uncomment those and run, I should get an error here. If we can get it to run, yep, there we go. And you can see it gives me a syntax error, invalid syntax, and it's saying background color is just pointing to this line. Now in reality, these aren't lines of code either, but you can see that it has identified this as not being actual code. Now if I go ahead and comment that out again, let's go ahead and run. Now the program comes up, no problem. And so there are a couple different ways within Python to comment out. One is with this just single hashtag or number sign. The other is with a series of quotation marks, right? And so the nice thing about this is I can create these quotation marks in there, and now I can put in essentially whatever I want to on multiple lines between that and not have it be an issue. So let's say I want to do commenting, I want to do the fonts, we're doing background, colors, and writing functions. And so now if I run it, again, Python is being told, okay, anything between these series of quotation marks, just ignore. That's not code, that's for the user. And so I've written these in comments of what we want to do today, but the way you would implement the comments themselves is to give you some sort of indication as to what the following code is doing. So maybe here we want to say, establishes welcome text. And now we can put this down here, gives clickable next button, and then we're eventually going to send that to a function which clears the window, which clears the window. And so now you can see that if I inherit this code from somebody else, if somebody sends this to me, I don't necessarily have to be all that familiar with Tkinter to start to get an idea of, okay, what are the sections of the code that are responsible for what I'm seeing on the screen. And so it's a good habit to get used to actually putting in comments within your code itself. I also tend to like to use comments, and this isn't the best way, I don't think, of doing it, but let's say I wanted to see what it would look like if I anchored on the left rather than on the center. And so now I can just add that comment there, and now I can add left and close it. And so now Python's not going to interpret this, but this allows me to remember, okay, what did I comment out to allow me to come back if I don't like the way it looks. I run it, and oh wait, look, it says bad anchor left. So turns out you can't use left, you can use these cardinal directions, or you can use the word center. Well, that's good, because now all I have to do is remove what I did, and boom, we're ready to go again. We can run it and see it's back. So just get in the habit of actually using comments in your code. So last time we talked about how to change the size of the window. We put text up there, we put the button. But you may be thinking, when we run this code here, even as you resize the window, the text is really small. You know, maybe we don't like it being that small. It's really hard to read. And so what we want to do is call within this label the parameter font. And so font is going to take two different arguments. One is going to be the actual type of font. So let's say Arial. And then after that, we're going to put a comma, and then we're going to put the font size. So let's say we want it to be Arial and size 40. Let's go ahead and run it. Now you can see that text is a lot bigger in Arial and of font size 40. So you can do this way, but one of the better habits to get into is establish essentially a variable in which you can put this Arial and 40, such that, let's say we wanted to create a second that says also hello world. We're going to put this down at the bottom. And so when we run it, see, perfect. All right, but you know what? Maybe I don't like that size of font. And so now I have to remember to go in and change this font to 30. I rerun it. Oh, wait, I meant to actually change this one as well. So now I have to go find the other instance of this being 40 to change that to 30. And so doing it this way is possible, but inadvisable. One of the better ways to do it is to initialize a variable up here, and we'll just call this variable font, and we will assign that variable what we actually want to go in here. So let's say Arial and 30. So now, instead of calling font here and assigning it Arial and 30, we can remove that, and we can just assign it our variable that we've created up here. So now, we go ahead and run it. This should look identical to what it was before. Perfect. But let's say I changed my mind and actually I did like that bigger font. So now I can change to 40 and I don't have to change it throughout the entire script, right? And so now you can see hello world, also hello world are both back up to 40, right? And so that creates a standardization that makes it a lot easier to just change one thing and have everything in your code changed thereafter that calls that variable. So that's a very good habit to get into. And again, you can change this, you can play with it. And so maybe we want this to be primary font, and then our paragraph font, we're going to say is also Arial because we like the look of that, but now we're going to do size 12. And so let's create another label in here. And this is going to say, look at you, you're becoming a programmer. Let's change that font to paragraph font. Oh, and we have to remember, because we changed that name, we have to change that there. Oops, and I accidentally wrote over that. So let's go back and change this. Let's put that at 3.5. Awesome. So now you can see any subsequent paragraph we want to use, we can just call that paragraph font, and any of that header, we can just call that primary font. So let's just go ahead and simplify what we've got here. Let's go ahead and move to that. We will just go back to calling this font for the time being. All right, so now we know how to put the text in different positions. We know how to change the font, but maybe you're saying, I want to know how to actually change the color of the font. So maybe instead of having hello world appear in black, I want it to appear in, let's say, red. And the way you can do that, go ahead and put another comma there, and you type in FG, and then type in just the string value of the color you want. So if we do this, hello world should appear in red, and boom, it does. I don't know what FG stands for, but I think it stands for foreground, and I will explain why that is in just a second. But you can assign that text, or excuse me, that text color to be red. You could do blue. I don't know all the colors you can actually use in here, but you can play around with it. So let's see if it recognizes orange. Yeah, and so you can have fun with that. It'll also accept hex colors if you are familiar with those codes, but for the time being, you can just type in the actual colors that you want. And so let's say we want the foreground to be blue, but we want it to actually appear highlighted. Or, let's just go ahead and change it back to black, but we want that black lettering to appear like it is highlighted. So to do that, instead of typing FG, we're going to type BG. And again, that's why I think it stands for foreground, because I think this stands for background. And so you would type in yellow. Now let's go ahead and run it, and boom, that text is now highlighted. That background for this label itself is yellow. Now, what if we wanted to change the entire Windows background? So instead of white, it's yellow. So we would go up here. I would put this right where we set the window size, because in this area, we can kind of consolidate down to everything that's going to be affecting that root window. And so let's call that root again. And then within root, we type in BG, again, for that background, and let's make it yellow as well. So let's go ahead and call that, and boom, now you can see the entire background is yellow, except for this button. If we wanted to change the color, the background of this button, we would have to change that in the text. All right, so we now have the yellow window, the ugly yellow window with the hello world, with the background itself of yellow. And great, we've got that, we've got a button. However, that button isn't doing anything, right? And we want that button to do something because it's a button. Now, what we're going to have to do is first write a function. And a function is going to just establish an area within the Python code that Python will see as doing something specific, but only when it's told to use that part of the code, right? So everything we're writing here, it's just going to run through. However, we don't want it to clear the window until we click this button down in here. So what we're going to do is go back up to the top here, and we're going to define our function. And to do so, we're going to type in def, and then give our function a name. So let's just call this the next button. And now, oh, we've already got that labeled down there. So let's just call this next function. And now we're going to put the parameters in this function to tell Python what to do when it's sent to this function. So let's say we want to just clear that window of the welcome and that next button. And so what we're going to do is use what's called a for loop. And so if you're not familiar with a for loop is just saying it's iterating through different options. So this isn't what we're going to be doing, but just to give you an example. So we say I in range 10 print hello world. And so what this is doing is saying for the index in range to 10, so this is going to go from 0 to 9. It's not going to be inclusive. It's not going to include 10 there. For index in that range, print hello world. And so if I go ahead and just comment out the rest of this, and I need to call this function down here, do so by next function. What you should see is down here, it's going to pop up hello world 10 times. Boom, hello world 10 times. Now you may be asking, why is it popping it up 10 times when I said it's not going to include 10? And it's because it starts at index 0. So it is in fact giving you 10 numbers, but it's starting from 0 and going to 9 rather than from 1 to 10. All right, so let's go ahead and cancel out of that, delete that, and let's uncomment the rest of this. So within this function, we want to clear the window. So we're going to use that for loop once again. I'm going to say for widget in root. So again, we're calling this root down in here. .w info underscore children. And then let me finish typing this and then I'll walk you through what it does. We're going to type widget.destroy. So what this is saying is for every widget, for everything that this function finds within this root loop here, so in this case it should find the welcome and it should find the next button, it's going to destroy that widget. And so you'll notice if we run this code and we click next, nothing happens, right? It's not destroying anything within this window. And that's because we haven't told Python that it needs to access this function. So to do so, we come down to that next button, type in command equals next func. So now it knows that if I click this button, the command for that is to send the code or the interpreter up to this function here. And now it's going to look for every widget within that root window. So all of the children within that root window. And then for each one of those, it's going to destroy that, right? So let's go ahead and run this. If I click next, boom, everything disappears, including that next button. Now you will notice that what it didn't remove is that background color, nor did it remove the parameters we set of how big that window should be. And that's because, again, all it's looking for are these widgets, the label, the button. If we add any other widgets in there, it's going to be looking for those, and then it's going to destroy those widgets. So you can get an idea of what capabilities you can employ with these functions. So let's say we want to destroy all of these, but then we want to get another label that says, well done, right? It wants to congratulate us on being able to write this function. And so we will create a new widget, tk.label, text equals well done. We're going to assign the font to be the font we created up there. And then we're going to go ahead and place that in the center of the screen. Anchor center. And now when we click that next button, it should remove everything that was already there and rewrite a new label. So we type up here, we click next, and boom, well done. Awesome. So this hopefully should give you an idea as to what some of the capabilities are of functions, how to employ the functions off of these buttons. So go ahead and play with it. Think about different things you could do. Maybe instead of having new text pop up, you want to give people 3 different options, right? A Monty Hall problem. Create 3 different doors represented by buttons and have them click on them and get a prize. So play around with that. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and type them in that comment section below. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.